Chapter 1. Faces and First Impressions. For the past 30 years, I've observed people closely. Friends, strangers, colleagues, and I've come to a rather unsettling conclusion. We don't truly know anyone. We assume we do. We judge people by the lines of their jaw, the shape of their smile, the light or coldness in their eyes. We build opinions in seconds, often convinced they're accurate. But time has shown me that the more I know someone, the more mysterious they become. Even my oldest friends still surprise me, or worse, confuse me. These thoughts came to me again this morning as I sat with my newspaper and saw a familiar name in the obituary column, Edward Hyde Burton. He had passed away in Cove, Japan. Just a short line in print, but seeing that name brought a flood of memory and something else too, something unresolved. I didn't know Burton well. Our paths crossed briefly, but in that time he left an impression on me I could never quite forget. You meet many people in life, and most of them fade into the blur of memory, but a few leave behind something lasting. Burton was one of those. He wasn't the sort of man you'd expect to surprise anyone. Small, neat, and reserved, he had a gentle presence. His white hair was always combed, his face flushed but friendly, and his light blue eyes gave off a quiet warmth. He looked like a man who had never raised his voice or held a grudge. A merchant by trade, he had spent many years in Japan. When I met him, he was around 60, a man who had lived but worn it lightly. We were introduced at the British Club in Yokohama. I was passing through, waiting for a delayed ship. He played a calm, generous game of bridge. Later, over drinks, I noticed his dry humor, his calm way of speaking. He never tried to impress, and yet he left a mark. Everyone at the club liked him. He was described as one of the best, a man respected, even admired. We happened to be staying at the same hotel, and the next evening he invited me to dinner. I met his wife, a cheerful round woman, and his two pleasant daughters. They seemed a close-knit, happy family. What struck me most about Burton was his kindness. It wasn't loud or performative. It came through in the smallest gestures, the softness of his voice, the sincerity of his smile. At the time, I believed I had a good sense of character. I was certain Burton was the kind of man who could never cause harm, but what he would eventually reveal to me, that unexpected quiet confession, shattered all my assumptions. It reminded me that even the gentlest faces can carry hidden shadows, and that sometimes the people we understand the least are the ones we think we know best. Chapter 2. A Kind Man in Yokohama. I met Burton during a quiet stopover in Yokohama. My ship was delayed, and with a few slow days ahead of me, I decided to pass the time at the British Club. That's where someone introduced us. "Ever played bridge with Burton?" a man asked. "No, can't say I have," I replied. "You should. He's better than he looks." That was the first hint of something interesting. Burton didn't look like someone who'd be good at cards. He was small, neatly dressed, and always composed, like a man who would rather read quietly than compete. But we sat down for a game, and I quickly saw he played with quiet confidence. No flashy moves, no arrogant smiles, just skill and calmness. "You've got a good hand, haven't you?" I said with a grin halfway through our game. He smiled, barely lifting his head. Sometimes the cards listen, sometimes they don't. That dry humor, it caught me off guard. After the game, we had drinks at the bar. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it made you lean in. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just was. His presence was restful, like a soft breeze at sea. "You're not from around here?" he asked me. "Number just passing through, waiting on a ship." "Well, you'll like Yokohama. It's a good place to wait if you must." Later, I found out we were both staying at the Grand Hotel. The next evening, he invited me to dinner. "Join me in the family?" he asked. "Wouldn't want to intrude," I said politely. "You wouldn't be," he replied simply. At dinner, I met his wife, round, cheerful, the kind of woman who made you feel welcome with just a glance. His 2 daughters were lively, teasing their father gently in a way that only comes from love. It wasn't a grand occasion, just a normal family meal, but there was something unusually peaceful about it. You could feel the closeness between them, the comfort of belonging. Over the meal, Burton listened more than he spoke, but when he did say something, it was always just right. Never too much, never too little. "You've built quite a life here," I said. He nodded, then looked at his wife and daughters with a faint smile. "It took time, but yes, a quiet one, and that suits me." He, that evening, left a mark. I thought I had him figured out. A kind man, gentle, well-liked, nothing hidden, nothing to question. But that's the funny thing about first impressions. They're usually based on how someone makes us feel, not who they truly are. And Burton, with all his calm and kindness, would soon show me something I never expected. Something that didn't fit the image at all. Chapter 3. The Namesake. The afternoon was unusually still. I was seated in the lounge of the Grand Hotel, staring out at the Yokohama harbor. Ships drifted in and out like lazy thoughts, their white sails catching the golden sun. The moment had a quiet rhythm to it, until Burton entered. He spotted me, gave a small wave, and sat down beside me. "What do you say to a little drink?" he asked. I nodded, grateful for the company. "Sounds perfect." He clapped his hands lightly, and a boy came with 2 tall glasses. As we sipped, we watched the street outside. A man passed by and waved at me. "Do you know Turner?" Burton asked, eyes following him. "I've met him at the club. They say he's a remittance man." He gave a slow nod. "Yes, I've heard. We've got a good many of them floating around here. Bridge players, mostly." That made me chuckle. It seems to be the unofficial pastime of the stranded. Burton smiled slightly, then his eyes wandered, turning thoughtful. "Funny thing, there was a fellow here once. Shared my last name, Lenny Burton." "Any relation?" "None, just a coincidence. But people assumed we were connected. We even looked vaguely alike at a distance. Though he was taller, younger, and certainly more spirited." I tilted my head. "You knew him well?" "Not deeply," Burton said, swirling the ice in his glass. "But I knew enough." He paused. His voice dropped, quiet and steady. "Lenny was a beautiful man in the way some men are, a face that made people stare. Curly blonde hair, clear skin, pink cheeks. He was always well-dressed, always charming. Women adored him. He had this sparkle, but it wasn't meant to last." "What happened to him?" "He drank," Burton said simply. "More than most. Lived wild. Every few months, money would come in from home, a small remittance, just enough to keep him afloat, and just enough to fuel his recklessness." "He sounds like a man searching for an anchor." Burton nodded slowly. "Yes, but he never found it. He made extra money from cards. He was a fantastic bridge player, best I've ever seen. Had a sort of instinct. Almost felt like he could hear the cards before they were played. He even took a good bit of money off me." I raised an eyebrow. "And you liked him anyway?" He chuckled. You can't help liking someone like Lenny. He was a rascal, but not a cruel one. Just lost. Burton leaned back, looking out the window. One day he came to my office, he continued, thin as a shadow, eyes dull. He looked older than his years of drink and bad decisions. He told me the money from home had stopped. No credit, no food, no place to go. Everything he had was pawned. He was desperate. Burton took a slow sip, his voice now heavier. He asked for a job. Said he'd do anything. He just needed a reason not to fall off the edge. What did you tell him? I asked softly. I told him to come back in 35 years. I said maybe then I'd have something for him. I blinked. That's cold. I thought it was a joke, Burton said quickly. But he didn't laugh. He just stood there, pale and shaking. Then he said if he couldn't work, he'd have to kill himself. A long silence passed between us. I looked at him, Burton said. Really looked. And I saw a man undone. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. Whatever pride he had was gone. What did you do? I asked him if he could do anything else. He said he could swim. Swim? I didn't expect that answer either. Burton smiled faintly. Said he swam for his university. I remembered a swim I had done as a young man. 3 miles around a dangerous beacon. I told him if he completed the same swim, I'd give him a job. And he accepted. Said he'd do it the next morning. We shook hands, and he walked out. I stared at Burton, searching his expression. He said no more, just stared into his drink. And in that moment, I wasn't sure whether I was listening to a story or a confession. Chapter 4. The Deadly Bet. Burton's eyes were distant now, as if he were seeing that morning all over again. I still remember the time, he said quietly. It was just after 10 when Lenny left. I told him the swim would take no more than an hour and a quarter. I'd meet him at the creek in Tarumi by noon. He paused. He said, "Done," and shook my hand like a man sealing his fate. I looked at him. You really thought he'd make it? Burton shrugged. He said he was a swimmer. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But that swim, that's over 3 miles, isn't it? Yes, and not easy. The currents around the beacon are strong. Even trained men have struggled. And you let him go? He wanted to prove something, Burton said. To me, maybe, but mostly to himself. The air between us thickened. The harbor outside now felt cold and endless. I had a lot of work that morning, Burton continued, voice low. Meetings, letters, interruptions. By the time I got to the creek, it was already 5 past noon. I waited 15 minutes, then 30. Nothing. Did you think he'd backed out? He shook his head. Number something told me he had tried and failed. He fell silent. I didn't press. Some truths are better left unfolding on their own. 3 days later, the body washed up, he said flatly. Near the rocks past the beacon. He'd gotten halfway at least. I sat still, unsure what to say. Even the clink of ice in our glasses had gone quiet. I was shocked, I admitted. You'd only just told me about him, and now he's a memory. Burton finished for me, that's all. A sad, silent one. There was a pause. Tell me something, I said after a moment. When you offered him that job, did you already know there wasn't a vacancy? Burton looked at me. And then came that mild little chuckle again, the same one he used when someone made a small mistake in bridge. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully, then turned those kind, unreadable blue eyes toward me. Well, he said, I hadn't exactly planned to hire anyone that week. My heart sank a little. You knew he might try it, I said. That he might drown. I knew he might, Burton replied, but I didn't expect him to. I didn't know whether to feel angry, sad, or just deeply disturbed. A man had drowned chasing a hope that never existed, and Burton had watched it unfold like it was a hand of cards. I stared at the gentleman before me. The soft voice, the calm smile, the twinkle in his eye. He didn't seem cruel, not even careless. But still, Lenny was dead. Burton raised his glass. To the ones we think we know. I raised mine, though my hand felt heavy. And in that quiet clink of glass, something in me shifted forever. Chapter 5. Two Faces, One Truth. I couldn't stop thinking about it, Lenny's desperate swim, his silent drowning, and the man sitting across from me who had sent him off with a handshake and a smile. We sat in the quiet lounge, the clink of glasses and the murmur of far-off conversation blending with the steady hum of the ceiling fan. Burton looked at ease, sipping his drink, as though he'd just recounted a harmless anecdote. "May I ask you something?" I said carefully. Burton turned his head toward me, his kind blue eyes still calm. "Of course." "That job you offered him, did it really exist?" He smiled softly, a smile that barely moved his lips. "No," he said, almost like he was confessing to losing a game of bridge. "There wasn't a vacancy in my office." There it was, the truth. I stared at him. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. "You knew that when you offered the challenge." He nodded, took another sip of gin. "Yes." "Then why?" My voice came out lower than I expected. Why send him out there? Why let them believe he had a chance? Burton didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window, watching the faint motion of ships in the harbor. His expression didn't change. There was no remorse, no triumph, just a kind of peaceful detachment. "I suppose," he said at last, "I wanted to see if he'd do it." I felt something cold grip my stomach. "But you knew the odds. You knew he might die." He nodded again lightly. "Yes, but I didn't expect him to. I thought he might surprise me." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're a strange man, Mr. Burton," I said. "You speak like someone who cares, but I don't," he offered gently. "I don't know," I said honestly. That's the thing. You don't seem cruel. You seem kind." He chuckled. "It's the face, perhaps." "Yes," I said quietly. "Maybe it is." Burton smiled again, the same mild smile, the same soft eyes. "We all have more than one face," he said. "The one we wear, and the one we hide." For a long moment, I didn't speak. I simply looked at him. Really looked. The fine wrinkles, the gentle voice, the air of wisdom and warmth. And behind it, something else. Something colder. That day, something shifted in me. I had always believed I could read people, that a look, a voice, a gesture could reveal the soul within. But now I wasn't so sure. Burton had shown me something I didn't want to see, how easily charm can cloak indifference, how kindness can be worn like a mask. Two faces, one truth. And suddenly, I wasn't sure how many others I had misjudged in my life.